Welcome back to The Pulse. I am David Harris Jr., and it's pretty straightforward. The majority of Americans want Congress to secure our elections, and President Trump called out Senate Leader John Thune to just get the job done. Now Thune says a vote is already set for next week, but until the Senate takes action, congressional GOP lawmakers are taking a bold stance to push the Senate. Representative Anna Paulina Luna posted on X, no more Senate bills will pass the floor until the standing filibuster is embraced and the Save America Act is passed. President Trump has doubled down on that, saying that he won't sign any other legislation until it gets passed. So is this enough of a push for Republicans to just get this on his desk so that he can sign it into law? Well, joining me now is California Congressman Kevin Kiley. Kevin, thanks for joining the Pulse this evening. You know, Democrats, they're expected to filibuster, and President Trump has told Thune to find the votes. Do you think Republicans can get this across the finish line?
Well, I think it absolutely should get across the finish line because it's just common sense. I mean, you know, the vast majority of Americans think that, yeah, you should present your ID when you vote. And I think when you talk to people around the world in other democracies, they're shocked when they learn that this isn't a requirement in the United States. It's like it doesn't even compute. You know, this is just like a basic requirement of a well-functioning democracy. It'd be as if people were told that you don't present an ID when you go to the airport. Or something like that. You know, in particular, like in California, I'm thinking back just a few years ago during the COVID lockdowns, if you wanted to go to Starbucks in certain parts of our state, you had to present your vaccine card, you have to present identification. So this is just common sense, and I think that's the argument that I would make as a supporter of the SAVE Act. This is just a basic thing we have in well-functioning democracies, you know, in the democratic world.
Yeah, it should be a very basic function of a democratic society. But we always know where Democrats lie when it comes to election integrity. Watch how far Senator Alex Padilla is willing to go to protect illegals' access to ballots.
That's their goal. That's their goal, to make sure that only the, quote, right people are voting, to elect, quote, the right leaders. We're not going to stand for it. I will die on the Hill to make sure it doesn't get out of the Senate.
He will die on the Hill to make sure it doesn't pass the Senate. And yet it's just common sense. I mean, is it any more obvious that they really are wanting people to cheat and not have to show ID in order to vote?
Well, there's certainly, you know, those comments are trying to create some sort of narrative that I don't think is really supported by the legislation. And he's the senator in my state of California. You know, California doesn't have a voter ID requirement. And not only that, California is actually the only state that actively forbids voter ID. They tell local jurisdictions that you are not allowed to require that ID be presented. And, you know, we had one crazy case recently where they found that a dog was voting in Orange County. And in fact, the dog died, and the dog kept getting a ballot in the mail for years. And the owner just happened to post a photo of the dog wearing one of those little I voted stickers. And so that's how we found out about it. So, you know, this is just the fact that this could happen in the United States, you know, when this is like the cornerstone of our country, right, is the ability to have, you know, an orderly, free and fair electoral process. And so I think that, you know, we should just be able to come together on this in a bipartisan way, put this issue behind us, and, you know, go on with having a democratic society.
Yeah, it seems like we should be able to do that, but we've got the current Democrat Party that just doesn't think we need to. Now, Congressman, you recently left the Republican Party to run as an independent. With the GOP majority so narrow, what influenced you to make that decision?
Well, you know, in our state, Gavin Newsom decided to overthrow the Citizens Redistricting Commission that we had, this independent commission, and to bring partisan gerrymandering back in California. And I think that's a threat to our democracy in our state. We now have dramatically gerrymandered districts. Mine was broken into 6 pieces. And so, you know, this is my way of looking at it, is that if he's going to try to make our elections all about partisanship, then the way to respond to that is, all right, let's just remove partisanship from the equation. And, you know, to be fair, there have been other states that have done this as well on both sides. I've opposed it everywhere that it's happened. Frankly, there's, you know, a lot of precedent for this in the sense that when you elect your mayor or your city councilor or your school board member, or your sheriff or your district attorney. Those are all nonpartisan offices. They don't have a party affiliated with them one way or the other. So this is the way that I've always approached my job. I saw that, James Wood recently came out as an independent, so maybe there's a little bit of a trend there, that I've always said I'm going to be an independent voice for my district. I'm going to answer to my constituents. I don't answer to party leaders.
Well, I appreciate that perspective, and you're probably spot on the money. Now, if you win the district as an independent, would you caucus with Republicans and vote for Mike Johnson to remain Speaker of the House?
Well, for the remainder of this term, I was elected as a Republican at the beginning of this term, so I'm continuing to caucus with Republicans for the remainder of the term. I've said that, as an independent, I don't prejudge those things going forward, and so I'll always just make the decisions that are best in the best interest of my constituents.
That makes a lot of sense. Again, more common sense from someone is always a
yes,
refreshing
it's less
thing.
common than it should be, but we're trying to bring it back.
It is less common than it should be. Congressman Kevin Kiley, God bless you. Thanks for joining the Pulse tonight.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.